Welcome to This Explainer. Seriously, I am absolutely thrilled to guide you through this today. Now, if you picture a student right now, you're probably imagining a kid sitting at a desk, staring blankly at a whiteboard, basically just waiting for a bell to ring so they can finally go eat lunch. But how did we actually get here? Well, today we're going to set the stage for a massive 1.5 million year journey into why we learn, how we learn, and when humans actually decided that what they knew was worth passing down to someone else.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's a wild thought for you. For 99% of human history, that modern classroom you just pictured simply did not exist. No bell, no desk, absolutely no teacher standing at the front of a room. Yet somehow, generation after generation successfully passed down incredibly complex languages, vital survival skills, and just vast amounts of knowledge about the natural world. So, if they didn't have schools, what did education actually look like?
To figure that out, we're going to trace the four distinct historical motivations that ultimately built our modern school system. First, survival, then administration, understanding, compliance, and finally, we'll wrap up with the modern blend.
All right, starting off with our first motivation, survival, tools, and firelight tales.
Think about the early days of hunter-gatherer societies. Learning definitely wasn't some scheduled activity or a neat little box to check. It was completely tied to immediate, life-or-death urgency. The earliest evidence we have of intentional knowledge transfer actually doesn't come from a written record, it comes from ancient stone tool manufacturing. Take the Acheulean hand axe, for example. These tools show a consistency of design that is so precise over hundreds of thousands of years that they literally could only have been replicated through direct teaching. But early humans weren't passing down these tool-making skills with boring lectures. Instead, an elder would physically guide the hands of the young. A child watched, they copied, they failed, and they were corrected. And not with words, but with a physical repositioning of fingers or a redirected strike. Learning meant direct physical mimicry for immediate survival.
And this brilliantly illustrates what happened next. As human language developed, that physical mimicry expanded into oral culture. Fast forward to around 300,000 years ago, when Homo sapiens first showed up. Back then, knowledge was stored entirely in the minds of the elders. When they died, the knowledge died right along with them, unless it was passed on orally. Anthropologist Polly Weisner analyzed the nighttime conversations of the Jew Hansi people of southern Africa, and she found something amazing. 81% of their campfire conversation was storytelling. We're talking myths, ancestor tales, and moral lessons. The campfire was basically humanity's original curriculum. Just a voice in the dark carrying crucial information forward through time.
You know, biologically, we are actually hardwired for this. While chimpanzees are pretty much self-sufficient within a few years, humans have a massive 18-year childhood. So the next time you wonder why it takes us almost 2 decades to grow up, just remember that evolutionary biologists argue this extended childhood evolved specifically as a dedicated window to accumulate all this heavy cultural and survival knowledge. And you can see the results of this long learning phase right in the archaeological record. 100,000 years ago at Blombos Cave, we see complex, multi-step processed ochre and pierced shell beads. 36,000 years ago at Chauvet Cave, we see anatomically accurate, highly sophisticated cave paintings. These kinds of skills don't just appear out of nowhere fully formed. They accumulate through years and years of practice, observation, and community education.
Moving right along to our second era, administration, agriculture, and the scribe.
So, roughly 10,000 years ago, our relationship with information was permanently altered. The shift from roaming hunter-gatherer bands to settled farming pretty much changed everything. As agriculture created complex societies, populations absolutely exploded. Farmers needed to track the seasons, traders had to calculate transactions, and rulers needed a way to record laws and debts. Suddenly, the sheer volume of information way exceeded what the human brain could reliably carry around. And this forced humans to invent writing. For the very first time ever, knowledge could exist outside of a human being. It could be stored, it could be copied, and it could actually outlive its creator. This shift from oral storytelling to written records fundamentally transformed how cultural knowledge was transmitted forever.
Now, what's really interesting here is how drastically the goal of education shifted. Let's contrast those ancient stone tools with the first formal school in recorded history, the Sumerian Edu Ba, around 2500 BCE. With stone tools, learning was all about immediate physical survival, basically how to not starve to death. But over in the Sumerian school,
Archaeologists have found tens of thousands of clay tablets just filled with cuneiform exercises, vocabulary lists, and math problems. These students studied for 12 years, and not out of some deep personal curiosity, but specifically to manage the Sumerian Empire's bureaucracy as scribes. Education had literally become a tool of the state, which I guess proves that suffering through 12 years of school just to learn how to manage taxes is a very ancient human tradition.
Which brings us to our third motivation: understanding Plato and the Academy.
Now, this state-focused bureaucratic system remained the norm until ancient Greece came along and changed the question entirely. Back in 399 BCE, Socrates was essentially given the ultimate cancellation. He was executed by the state for asking way too many uncomfortable questions in the streets of Athens. Deeply shaken by this, his student, Plato, went and founded the Academy. Unlike those Sumerian schools, the Academy wasn't built to churn out bureaucratic workers. It was built purely to understand reality. They studied philosophy, math, and astronomy to develop their minds. Tradition actually says the phrase, "Let no one ignorant of geometry enter here," was carved right above the entrance. This philosophical, curiosity-driven approach laid the groundwork for Plato's own student, Aristotle, who went on to systematize practically every branch of modern academic disciplines, from biology all the way to literary theory.
Next up, our fourth motivation: compliance, mass literacy, and the state.
Let's move ahead and see how this builds, because an education system built just for a few deep thinkers sitting in an Athenian park, that doesn't scale very easily. Let's look at how learning transformed into a rigid, compulsory state requirement. It starts with early institutions like the University of Bologna opening in 1088. Then, boom, in 1440, the printing press democratizes books, making mass literacy an absolute necessity. Ideas could suddenly spread like wildfire, way faster than any individual teacher could ever travel. By 1763, Prussia introduced compulsory state education, and England quickly followed suit in 1870. For the first time in history, getting an education wasn't just a personal choice or a specialized trade. It was something every single child was legally mandated by the state to receive.
And that leads us perfectly into our final section, the modern educational blend.
So the crucial point here is what exactly happens when you smash all of these distinct historical eras together? Well, you get exactly what a student sitting at a desk today is currently experiencing. Current classroom systems are actually just a massive composite of these four ancient motivations, functioning all at once. Think about it. When a student takes a health or home economics class, that's survival. When they're learning highly structured math and writing so they can fit into the modern workforce, that's Sumerian administration. When they are analyzing classic literature or debating ethics, that's the Greek pursuit of understanding. And the very fact that they are required by law to be sitting in that seat at 8 a.m. sharp, that is pure Prussian compliance. Every modern school is a mixture of all four of these historical motivations operating at the exact same time. Here is the really profound takeaway from all of this. For the vast majority of human history, education wasn't a building you went to, it was a relationship. It was a child watching an elder or an apprentice working closely with a craftsman. The concept of an institution came much, much later. We built these standardized classrooms because we urgently needed to make education scalable. And honestly, it worked beautifully for that purpose. We can now educate billions of people across the globe. But in standardizing it, we kind of removed the high-stakes, immediate relevance that ancient learning used to possess. I mean, a hunter-gatherer child who didn't learn which mushrooms were poisonous didn't just get a bad grade on a pop quiz, they didn't survive. We replaced that primal, life-or-death urgency with a highly effective but very, very different bureaucratic system. Which leaves us with a pretty critical thought to end on today. The human desire to pass on knowledge, that ancient fire from the hunter-gatherer camps, is absolutely still burning inside of us. But we really have to ask ourselves, have we lost some of the essential fire of learning by taking it out of the wild, placing it indoors behind glass, and scheduling it to ring precisely for 45 minutes on a Tuesday?